So my son has been in basic training now for, gosh, over a month. It's crazy. It's crazy how fast time goes. Actually, he's coming up on 6 weeks. And what has been really like enjoyable for me during this experience is reading the letters from him. I'm pretty sure the kid writes like 5 letters a day. And he writes them in the most interesting ways, which you can really learn a lot about someone and how they write handwritten letters. And especially think about this generation. I mean, he's 17 years old, born in 2008. So, a generation that's full of like social media and everything being digital and instant. And here he is writing handwritten letters with pen or pencil and paper. And it's really unique how he writes them. He says, "Dear," and then whoever the name is. So, "Dear Mom." And then he dates and timestamps each entry. And he doesn't write one whole letter at a time. Sometimes he does, but typically he writes them in journal like entries, which I found really interesting to see how his layout of his letters. So he'll like maybe start one in the morning if he wakes up before formation, he'll write an entry about what he's thinking about for that day. And then if they're waiting at the shooting range, he might not write another entry. And he told me in these letters that he keeps them in his pocket of his uniform, of his OCPs, and pulls them out and adds different entries until the page front and back are full, and then he pops it in the mail whenever they have their mail call. But I think he writes probably 1 or 2 letters a day to different people within the family. So the layout of his letters are really cool, and I think it speaks to who the person is and how they think. Because when you're having to put thoughts to paper and not just say it over a voice text, a FaceTime, I mean, that's what this generation does. I mean, he's one of four, and they walk around on FaceTime all the time with their friends. And sometimes, it feels like that is how they interact in the world is they'll, maybe not be right in the same room with their friends, or their friends have moved away, but they'll be able to FaceTime with them while they're, doing their makeup or playing a game or even talking with other friends who are in the room. One friend will be on FaceTime for whatever reason. So when you have to organize your thoughts to paper and how that looks, I think that probably, I'm assuming, speaks to how your brain works. At least for me, I think that is what I'm learning more about him, is how his brain works. And in so many of his letters, he refers back to one-on-one time with me as his mom. So, like it was last year, my freshman and sophomore year, I was, like, hey, you can take the bus. A couple times I would drive him to school. And then it really hit me in his junior year. So this past school year, I was like, you know what? I'll take you to school every day. So there were very few days I missed taking him to school. And he could ride the bus, but it just felt like what a perfect opportunity of time to be able to connect with him on a very personal level without his siblings in the car, without distraction. And it's only like a 10 to 15 minute ride one way, but still, I mean, that's 10 to 15 minutes of connection time. And sometimes it was just us blaring our favorite music. Other times we would sit in silence because we'd be tired. But there was those moments where you'd have like those really deep connecting conversations about whatever he was going through at school or what he was going through as a person. And it was like that last month before we going into basic training, so like the month of April and May, he really started to lock in and share some deep thoughts about how he was feeling about joining the military. And I don't know about how this generation relates to the administration and everything going on with the government right now and all the changes, but it's really cool to see it from their perspective. So when I ask my kids, like, what do you think about our new president? What do you think about the changes that they're making, in the government and schools? Just to hear their perspective could be really insightful, because I know, like, for myself, I see things with my own lens. And I see things as a veteran, as a government employee, but they're going to see things completely different. So now that Vincent has transitioned into actually learning how to be a soldier, he's getting another set of perspective. He's getting another lens and how he sees all these changes. And he continues to share that in his letters. So before going to basic, it was all about, locking in and making sure he was squared away, a little bit of nervous feelings about what to expect, especially right before that last week before he shipped out. And now that he's about 5, 6 weeks into the training, almost halfway through, he's really starting to share deep feelings, beliefs, perspectives, opinions on how he is getting to see the military, the government from this set of lens that he's creating for himself, this set of beliefs that he's creating for himself. And it's ironic. He's enrolled into AP classes for next year, and I had to send him his AP homework, and he had picked political history for one of his AP classes. So I sent him the homework, and ironically, I wrote him a little letter to make sure that the drill sergeants knew it was his AP homework, so he has to get it done. And I thought it was really interesting that the AP homework was to write about a current political event and how it's impacting you as a almost senior in high school. And I was like, oh my gosh, how is this perfectly designed for you while you're in basic training and you're hearing all these different things about what's happening around the world and decisions that people are going to start making, and the government and the military. And how is this perfectly designed for you to write about what you're experiencing and what you're seeing right now? Like, you're literally living it. Like, he's living it day in and day out. Today I got an interesting letter, and actually I went to the mailbox yesterday, and I don't know if he just writes really fast or if they mail all the letters at once, but I got 5 letters in the mail yesterday, and as I read through all of them, each one are just different, different perspectives, different thoughts he was having in that given day, in that given moment. The last letter I read was really interesting. He talks about his name, and he said, I never realized I had a connection with my name. And he said, everyone out here calls me Private, and he said, sometimes they'll say my last name, and it feels almost like a warm blanket to hear my last name being called. He's like, but no one says my first name. And he said, and I didn't realize it would matter until it wasn't there. And as I'm reading this letter, I was thinking about the identity we have with who we are called and what we are known for by that, like what connection we have to that name. And I've known people that have changed their names for different reasons, and because they lost connection, or they never had a connection with their name they were given at birth, or maybe they had a bad association with that name based off of a life situation or experience. And so I've seen that come out in different situations with different friends and family members that I've seen change their name. But then the flip side of that is when you do feel connected to your name and you do feel that you have identity in what that is and who you are and how that name relates to you, and then it's taken away from you and no one uses it. And so in this letter he wrote, it's been over a month since anyone has called me by my first name. And he said, I realized I really miss being called by my first name. So he said, I asked one of my battle buddies here, hey, when we're in the bay, when we're in the barracks, can you call me my first name? Because I think I need that comfort right now. And if you would like, I will call you your first name as well. And then he said it grew from there, and a group of them are all using each other's first names just when they're in the privacy of their barracks. And I just thought, wow, that is such a beautiful thing, because he's choosing to be associated with the name that he most connects with, his given birth name. And for him, that's part of who he is, his identity. And it's comforting to hear that name called. And a big part of what I've learned through years of coaching veterans and military spouses is one thing I hear that's very common is, I don't know who I am. I've been in the military since I was 17 years old. I've lost a little bit of identity of who I am as a person. I'm so used to seeing rank. I'm so used to being called by my last name. I'm so used to being called by my title. There's no real personal, deep connection with who I am as a person in my first name, or who you are, unrelated or related to your first name. And so along the way, I've had veterans, multiple veterans, and some spouses tell me that they just have lost who they are. They can't even remember, especially those who have been in 20, 30, even 40 years. And so I just really thought that was such an interesting perspective for him to have at such a young age, right at the entry level of just the very basics of learning to become a soldier. And already he has this awareness of my name matters. But if you go deeper beyond the name, I I feel like it's more than that. But who he is as a person matters. And he knows that, and he has deep connection with that, and he knows it's important to stay true to that. So much so that he not only created that for himself, but he also created it for others who wanted to align with that. It's like, hey, can I call you your first name? And then will you do the same for me? And it's almost as if he's like creating this space, this private, sacred space where him and this group of soldiers in training get to be themselves. They get to have the space to be themselves and who they are, and they can have both. And that's what I always tell veterans, especially those who are still in and they're transitioning into private sector, into the civilian world, is like, you still get to be yourself, and you still get to be a veteran, and you still get to be a military spouse, or you still get to be in service, a service member. You can have both. You can be all of the titles. It's really about how and what you want to create for yourself, what matters to you, and how you flex from title to title, from role to role. And I used to think about this so much when, sorry if you hear my cat, but she's meowing. I tell the kids to be quiet while I'm on a podcast, and then of course the cat meows, so that's just life. But, I think about myself, and at one point I was a student. I was working on my bachelor's. Yeah, I was working on my bachelor's. I was a young soldier. I was a mom of 2 toddlers. I was a military spouse. Like, I had so many freaking titles. And it was like, I felt like I was constantly like, I pictured myself with like all these balls in the air trying to juggle them all at once. And if I dropped one, they would all fall. And that was like 23-year-old mindset. It was like, oh my gosh, I have so many things to juggle. And I don't think I had a stronger identity in one or the other. I don't think I really knew who I was. I think it was just more like I was grasping for all the things at once. And as I've gotten older, it's more about like who I am, owning that, and then how I flow through each of these roles that I've taken on, whether it's supervisor, leader, mother, spouse, whatever that looks like. I can go into that role and step right out of it and go back into it and just flow. I don't have to juggle them all at once. I don't have to just pick one. The military community, they're big on picking one. You don't have to just pick one. You can just like flow through it, and you can really hold them all, but maybe not at the same time like I was trying to do. But you can have them all and flow through them as it is, as it pertains to that given situation or that given experience and what's called for in that moment. So I wanted to share that experience with reading my son's letter today. I couldn't believe the awareness he had about his name. And it was, to me, it's just, I don't know if this applies to him truly as like, his own mind and how he believes and thinks. But my takeaway from it was like, wow, like, yes, you get to create space to still be yourself and learn how to be a soldier and be there for your friends and your community and your battle buddies and all those things at once, because we're very capable humans. We're so able to do it all. We don't have to choose. We can actually like flow through it and be able to have it all. Not have to choose, but we can have it all at the same time. It just might look different from person to person and what we choose in that moment based off of what we want and what we want to create. And I just love how he brought it into the other battle buddies. Like, hey, do y'all want me to call you your first name? We can do it privately in the barracks, so we don't get in trouble. But as he's creating that safe space for community and belonging and just that respect for who those people choose to be in that moment. So I just love that, love that, love that. And I wanted to share that with everyone and how we get to choose to be ourselves. It's so important. We get to be our own identity.